สวัสดีครับผมเดียวนะครับมาอีกครั้งแล้วครับกับงาน TIJC นะครับ2017วันนี้ผมมีโอกาสได้สัมภาษณ์สุดยอดมือกีตาร์ที่ผมเชื่อว่ามือกีตาร์แจ๊สหลายๆคนรอคอยเชิญพบกับคุณ Julian Lage นะครับ Hello Julian
Hello, hello.
สวัสดีครับ
Thank you for having me.
Yes we waiting for you to come to Thailand for a long time
Yes, me too.
Yeah.
I've been wanting to come for many years.
Okay we have so many story to ask you about your playing guitar and
Anything,
Yes.
anything you want to know.
Okay, we start.
Okay.
Let's start the first question. Tell me about your music background.
Okay.
Yes.
I began playing guitar when I was 5 years old, and because my father played guitar, and I just wanted to play with him, so he taught me blues, anything related to blues. Stevie Ray Vaughan,
Yeah.
Muddy Waters, T-Bone Walker,
Yeah.
Eric Clapton. These were my favorite guitar
Is it a
players.
blues guitar?
All blues
Yes, all
guitar.
blues guitar.
I loved blues guitar. And then when I was about 8 years old, I got into jazz when I heard Jim Hall. Jim Hall, and I fell in love with it.
Yes, I love him too.
He's the best. He
Yes.
is the best. So I started studying it, and I went to see Jim and meet him when I was about 11 years old. And after that, I began playing a lot with Gary Burton, the vibraphonist, which was huge for me because I started to tour the world and record. And at this, just a little bit before that, I started recording with David Grisman, the mandolin player. So my life was like American traditional music and then jazz, modern jazz.
Yes.
And I just kept studying that for my whole life and started making records of my own. And that more or less has been what I've been doing all the way up until today.
Yes. Okay. Who is your inspiration guitarist all the time?
I think my
Jim Hall.
Yeah, Jim Hall. Jim Hall's my favorite. I was so lucky to be around him in New York and play with him, but
You play with him too?
yeah, we did some shows together as a quartet with Scott Colley and Joey Barron. And I feel so grateful. And the funny thing is that even if I hadn't ever met Jim Hall, the feeling I've gotten from his records is so powerful. And I feel like if anyone's ever heard Jim Hall, they've gotten the full experience. And that's what's so profound about him. He was, I don't know, he was like no other.
He's so excellent.
He's so excellent and so funny. You know, such a sense of humor in his music, which I really respect. And frankly, I just felt like there's no one else like that, you know, who's both serious and funny and dramatic and sensitive. So Jim was always my guy. And then, of course, you know, Django or Charlie Christian or Eddie Lang or Tony Rice or Stevie Ray Vaughan or any of these people as well.
Yes. Okay, next. Do you have guitar practice routine?
No.
No.
No, it's different every day. I used to. When I was a kid, I would play, you know, practice scales or I'd practice chords. But a lot of the things I practice today are have to do with music that I need to learn for a show or for a record. Like the music we're playing here in Thailand, some of it's from a new record we recorded last week. And I haven't played it in front of people yet. So when I practice that. And if I have more time, I'll practice maybe my touch or technique or my time with the instrument.
Maybe you have any exercise warm up before your show?
It's always different before a show, but I'd say the most common thing for me is playing both slow and fast. So sometimes it'll just be, I guess what you would call long tones. Just making, you know, if you're nervous and you're about to play, you sometimes get kind of, you know, jittery or shaky. So to slow down is good. Play it slow. Dun, dun, really, and even slower. Just play a scale or a melody. And then at the same time, I want to feel like I could play fast when I go on stage, or I don't have to warm up. So sometimes you have to just play almost to wake yourself up.
Okay, yes. You have excellent right hand technique. Do you have any advice?
Not really. I mean, the best advice I could offer, and it may sound funny, but it's true, is that both hands are really important. You know, I've noticed that the more I focus on my right hand, the tighter my left hand gets. And I had an injury once because all I was thinking about was the right, and then I didn't ever think about the left. And so I think the way to have a good right hand is to not focus on it too much. If you can't play something that, you know, it's too hard for your right hand, slow down. And sometimes the thing that's making the right hand work poorly is that the left hand you're not thinking about it. And even more than your hands, are you breathing? Are you scrunched? Are you locking your legs? Often it's everything but the right hand that makes the right hand good.
You have to synchronize.
You have to
Left and right.
synchronize left and right, and also upper body and lower body. Like if I'm sitting and playing and I get really rigid, locked, I get tired. So that's my best advice: is don't focus too much on it, because that might actually hurt you. That's what I think.
So amazing.
Yeah.
What did you learn from classical music and bring it to jazz playing?
Well, I studied classical music when I was younger. I didn't study long. I mean, just a little, you know, a couple years maybe. I think what I learned more than anything was to have an appreciation for, what's the word? Interpreting a song.
Okay.
Interpretation.
Interpretation.
Because in classical, it's everything, right?
Seems like jazz music.
It's similar to jazz. How you play, you know, a melody in a Bach lute suite or Villalobos or something. It's all about how you play it. So I liked that quality, and I think with jazz it's similar. It's not just playing a solo, but it's how you play the solo, and that you have a choice. You can decide or choose how you want to express it. And then technically I studied fingerstyle a little bit, but I don't actually play with my fingers. Mostly everything is with a pick, but sometimes it'll be pick and fingers. Hybrid.
Hybrid.
Hybrid. So I learned that from classical, from trying to adapt some of that style to jazz.
I used to. No, I heard you say long time ago about you looking to your guitar. You look your guitar like a orchestra.
Yeah? Oh yeah.
You said it.
Yeah, I do think of the guitar as an orchestra. I mean, and I'm not the first or the last person to say that. Segovia used to talk about the guitar as the low strings are like the basses and the cellos, and the high strings are like the flutes, and it's a very big range, you know. And I think it helps to think of it that way, especially when you're playing with a band, because sometimes you think you're only like a horn player, or you have to play high, but even the lowest register of the guitar, like the low E string on a traditional guitar, is still an octave higher than the bass. So I try to use as much of it as possible, because there's not a lot.
Sometimes you play like this.
You can use the whole thing. I think it's meant to do that. I don't know. Maybe it's not, but it's certainly very doable. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. When you have to learn a standard jazz song, what is your process?
Well, I learned something from Tuck Andrus. You know Tuck Andrus, the guitar?
Yes, GuitarThai used to interview him.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He was actually... They've come here, haven't they, to Thailand?
Yeah.
I remember when he came. He raved about Thailand. But anyway, when I was a kid, I took a lesson from him, and he talked about learning standards where you learn them with the bass and the melody at the same time, and you don't learn chords yet. And so every standard has two melodies. The high one, you know, like Autumn Leaves, da 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 da, and it's got a low melody, the boom, 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 boom. And so I started thinking of them as more like an invention, like a Bach invention, or like counterpoint. And for whatever reason, thinking of it that way helps me remember it more than if I learn the chords and then the melody, or the melody and then the chords. You learn it as a two-voice melody. And that gets it stuck in my head a little bit better. And then the chords can change. I can do any chord I want. But Tuck taught that to me for any song, and I really learned a lot. That's how I practice any new songs.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. How did you make yourself relax when you play in a very fast tempo like a bebop or very slow tempo like a ballad?
Oh wow, good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I am relaxed. You know, I think if I'm playing fast, the thing that I try to remember is that there's always a slow tempo too. So even if it's there's always you can always cut it in half. Keep cutting it in half.
Yeah.
So I try to, if it gets too fast for me, I try not to think about da 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 da. I just think of like da 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 da. I don't think too small of a subdivision.
Yeah.
And with a ballad, similarly, I don't think too slow. If it's too slow, I'll think, faster in my head. So if it's da 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 da, maybe I think verses, because then I'll probably start getting slower. So if for slow I think faster maybe, and for fast I think slower.
Like a flip-flop.
Like a flip-flop.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Next question: how to practice for a good articulation in jazz?
In jazz. I don't know. I don't know. It's funny. Articulation is, it's very personal, and I think some of my favorite music doesn't have a lot of articulation. If I think of Lester Young, or some of these players who are very legato, Billie Holiday for that matter, they're not articulating the way we think of when we think of Charlie Parker or even Oscar Peterson or somebody who's very articulate. So I think the most important question is, do you even like the way that sounds? Like for a lot of years I tried to articulate every note by going down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up with the pick. And then everything sounded really even. And then I just in the last few years I realized I don't like the way that sounds. Like I don't actually like that. I can do it, kind of, but I actually would prefer it not to be articulated and kind of sloppier. So if you decide that you do like it, maybe the best way to do it is just practice slowly so you get each note very clear, and then as you speed it up, it'll stay articulate. Now, when I say slowly, I mean really slow. Like if you're practicing a scale, maybe you practice at 30 beats per minute.
Okay.
Really slow, almost. It's like every 2 or 3 it's like that. That could be your how do you say it? That could be your quarter note. And then once that feels good, go slower to 10 beats per minute.
To 10.
Then go to 5. No, down to like 9 or 10. Then to 5. Really slow, and that helps for articulation once you go faster.
It's very hard.
It's very hard. For me, it's hard.
Okay. Another thing usually come with articulation is layback.
Yeah.
Can you talk more about it?
Well, how to lay back? How to lay back? I don't know. Laying back is, or for that matter, pushing ahead, is always going to be in relation to, the drummer or the bass player. It's only behind. It has to be behind something. So the best way to practice it is with another musician or with a metronome. If you do it just by yourself, you don't know if you're laying back or if it's harder to tell. So I'd say if you want to practice that, there are many times, for example, when I think that I'm laying back, and then I hear a recording and I'm actually rushing. So I don't know. I realize that I can't always tell. So for me, recording and then listening back and analyzing can help me hear what I'm actually doing, especially when it comes to laying back or pushing ahead or playing right on the beat. But again, very personal, very personal.
Yeah, okay. Maybe we change to talk about your gear.
Sure.
Yeah. Now today which guitar you use?
So I love the Telecaster.
Yes, you changed it.
I changed it.
Maybe 1954.
Exactly.
This is the original?
This is an original,
Wow.
yeah. The one I have here, I brought a different one, but I have two Tellies that I play a lot. One is a 1954 Telecaster, which I love, and the other is something called called a Nacho Caster.
Okay.
I don't know if you know about it.
Yeah, I know.
In Spain, in Valencia, there's a guy named Nacho who makes the best, in my opinion, that I've ever played, replicas of Blackguard Tellies, so from 50 to 54. And the one I'm playing is actually a broadcaster. So Tellies started, they were Esquires, then they became broadcasters, then no-casters, and then Telecasters.
Yes.
So broadcasters are a little different. The bridge pickups are hotter. They put out more output. The finish is just one coat of paint, whereas a Telecaster is a paint and then something called clear coat. It's like two, it's a little denser. And I only got this guitar maybe 3 months ago, and I love it. And I have an old one, and I still think it's one of the best guitars I've ever played. It feels really good, it sounds really good, it's light, and it's a lot cheaper than if you bought a 1950s Telecaster, where they're very expensive. So those are my main guitars, and then for amplifier, I usually use a 1960 Tweed Champ, a Fender Champ. You saw it on a video, maybe? Yeah. There's a video with it. Yeah, that's
really cool sound.
It's a cool sound. It's only 3.5 watts, 8-inch speaker, very small, and it just has one knob, just on
Just
or
one
off.
knob.
There's
Wow.
no tone, no reverb. I add reverb with the pedal sometimes, but that's my favorite amp. I feel like if I can make it sound good with that amp and that guitar, then I'm playing the way I want often. Here, I also use whatever amps are at the venue, so I'll use a twin reverb, and that's what I have here.
It's on the venue.
That's it, yeah, that's
Okay.
what, and it sounds great too. I use this pedal it's by a Greek company called Jam. And it's an overdrive, it's basically like a clean boost, so that with an amp like a twin reverb, which is 85 watts compared to 3 watts, I can turn the amplifier down and then send more signal to the preamp so that it compresses a little more. So it's not distortion or overdrive, it's just maybe a bit thicker.
Okay.
And then a lot of it is with just the bridge pickup, which I always thought was really bright, but it's actually on my favorite kind of tellies, it's pretty warm.
Yeah.
It's very clear. It's very clear. Whereas the neck pickup can be a little bit muffled, like kind of. The bridge pickup is alive.
Yeah. And how about Linda Manzer?
Linda Manzer, my main guitar for most of my life has been a Linda Manzer Blue Note, which is an arch top. It's not that different from your guitar in the construction. It's a laminate, but it's carved, so it's not. There's no feedback.
No feedback?
No feedback at all, because it's like it was a top that was made by Roger Bories. It's what they would call 5-ply. So it goes maple, mahogany, maple, mahogany, maple.
Oh, wow.
And then they squish it, and then they shape it. And it's just one Ken Armstrong humbucker. It's a great guitar.
Wow.
And then the other guitar I play a lot is a 1939 Martin, an old Martin 00018, which is an acoustic guitar. And those are my 3 main guitars: the Telecaster, the Manzer, and the Martin.
You play calling?
And I play Callings, that's true.
You play.
Well, Callings a few years ago made something called a Waterloo, which is their new style, and they're great. They're modeled after old Gibsons, and they're very light. And I thought to them they're almost like they're cheap guitar. They're very simple. They can make them fast. And I've always loved Callings, but these I thought were especially great. So I worked with them we worked together, I should say, to make a Martin guitar that's as light. So they recently made me 2 guitars, just like my old Martin, but they have the finish of the Waterloo, of the cheap guitar. And I love it. I really love them.
Very cool sounds.
It's really cool sounds, yeah.
Okay. This question about a jazz student. In your opinion, what is the obstacle for jazz student in study and jazz?
Well, that's a great question. You know, I think I don't know is the real answer. I think I've known students who love studying jazz and they go to school for it and they become amazing and their brains really respond to thinking of the music analytically. They think about the scales and they think about the chords and it works. And then I know other students who maybe don't like that as much. They prefer to play and not talk about it, and I think that works for them too. So for the modern jazz student, I think the biggest obstacle is to ask yourself, remember to ask yourself what feels good, what's your favorite way of learning? It's not a given, for example, that you're someone who practices 10 hours a day. Maybe you don't do it because it actually feels bad and it's better for you to maybe not practice but just write music, or maybe it's better to not write music and only play music, or maybe it's better to join someone's band, or maybe it's better to start your own band. Everyone's different, you know, so I think that's the number one piece of advice is to ask yourself when are you happy and when are you sad, and do more of the thing that you do when you're happy. There's no shortage of good information. You know, it's so easy to learn about things these days, to learn about jazz history, to learn about guitar history, to learn about scales, to learn about theory. But make sure that you like it, because I don't know, I liked it. Like I always was what you'd call a nerd. A nerd, I love that stuff, and I study, and it's really cool, but I also love just playing. So I always did kind of both, and I think that was important for me.
Yes. Maybe you can talk more about your album.
Yeah.
Like a World Fair.
A World Fair, yeah. In the last few years, I made 2 records that were they were kind of different, but from
Yes. Another your album. I'm not sure.
Was it with Nels? Or who was it?
Yes.
Right.
You play with Nels.
Yeah, Room.
And
then there's one with Avalon. Avalon with Chris Eldridge. That's right. There's been more.
Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, of course. There's 2 of the duos that I play in a lot are with guitar players. One is with Nels Cline, who I love dearly, and he's one of my favorite guitar players. And we met through Jim Hall, actually.
Yeah.
He introduced us, our friend Brian Camilio, who was Jim's best friend. He introduced us. But anyway, the music we play is largely improvised. And it's inspired by the music of Jimmy Giuffre, Paul Blais, Steve Swallow, and a certain style of spontaneous composition. And we had a record that came out a couple years ago called Room, which features that. And then at the same time, I made a record with another person I love very much and respect so much, a guitarist named Chris Eldridge. We call him Critter, that's his nickname. And Critter plays in a band called Punch Brothers, which is a very popular progressive acoustic band out of, America, led by Chris Thiele. So that we made a record that's very different than Room. It was more bluegrass inspired, more all acoustic. And Chris Eldridge, he sings as well. And because I had 2 projects that were very much about collaboration, I wanted to do 2 projects that were very personal. So I made a solo guitar record called World's Fair, and that's just for 1 acoustic guitar that I really enjoyed making. It was the record I was always afraid of making because I thought it would be too hard, and it was really hard. And I made it once, and then I threw it out, and I made it again because I didn't like it the first time. So the one that you hear is the second record. And then this record called Arclight, which is the newest record I made as a band leader,
Yeah.
where I play Telecaster. It was the first time I ever played Telecaster in public. And that was a lot of music from the 20s, 1920s, early jazz. And then just last week, we made another record, which will come out hopefully next year.
Yes.
And it's
I
all-
saw.
Yeah, you saw, we were talking
Yeah,
about it.
You're talking about it.
And that's all original music that is kind of the evolution of Arclight. It's all original music, and it's just the Telecaster and the Champ, and it's kind of, I don't know, it's like the next step for me. And I'm thinking about another record that I want to make too. So, yeah, a lot of cool projects.
Yes. Maybe the last question.
Yeah.
In your opinion, what is the most important thing that guitarists should pay attention but they are not?
Oh, interesting. What they should pay attention to but
Yeah.
are not. That's a great question. Well, you know, the simple and honest answer is I have no idea. I have no idea. I think what we pay attention to is what defines us. And that can be a bad thing, or it can mean we only notice pedals, so that's all we care about, and we forget about music. Or we only notice music, and we forget about our sound. But I think it's also wonderful, because I look at guitar players who care about rhythm and feel.
Oh,
and
rhythm and feel.
Rhythm and feel, and that's the most important thing, and then everything else is kind of secondary. And I really respect it, because for me, I maybe think more about maybe melody first, and then
Melody
rhythm.
first,
Maybe,
yeah.
but I like that we're different, you know. Or there are people who think about creating, you know, emotion, like really emotional
emotion.
players, and they do all these amazing things, and I wouldn't, you know, think of that first, or maybe I would, but I don't think I'm in any position to say what anyone else should do. All I can do is be supportive of the fact that we're all playing the same 6-string guitar, and yet no one sounds the same, and I think that's wonderful.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Hope you enjoy for your show tonight.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ครับนี่คือบทสัมภาษณ์กับคุณจูเลียนลาชนะครับถ้ายังไงกีตาร์ไทยต้องขอบพระคุณงาน TIJC ปี 2017 นะครับแล้วก็วิทยาลัยดุริยางคศิลป์มหาวิทยาลัยมหิดลนะครับแล้วพบกันว่ากีตาร์ไทยจะอินเทอร์วิวศิลปินท่านไหนนะครับครั้งนี้ผมลาไปก่อนครับสวัสดีครับ